Oh, right. I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope you're having a great day. Tonight we're going to talk about whether or not what you should do when you're dealing with your workplace bully, whether you should push back or pull back, right? I mean, what do you do? And so that's what we're going to talk about. And the reality is when you're dealing with someone who's bullying you, you're doing a lot of pushback, pullback, and back and forth. And you know, what's best is really what you decide is best, what your goal is for the situation, and what you want to get out of it. Okay, so that's kind of an easy, you know, not the best answer. But what I mean by that is if you are dealing with a bully long term, that's that is where you really have to be very strategic. And there are times when you're going to want to push back on your workplace bully, and times where you might just throw your hands up and say, I just don't have the energy to deal with it. I do think, however, that there are times when it's absolutely a must that you have to push back, and maybe times where it's not always in your best interest to push back. Okay. Again, I'm going to say this, and I know I've said it 1,000 times, and I'm like a broken record. The best thing you can do for yourself if you are being bullied is to start to document. And not because you want to report or do anything like that. It's because documenting allows you to see exactly when you're being bullied and how you're being bullied. And that's really important. And the other thing is, if you document too, which just as a sidebar, you should be documenting how you're responding to workplace bullying, but you should never turn that over to HR or anybody that you're going to report to. Okay, now that I put that clarifying statement in. So you want to document how you're responding, because that's going to tell you if pushing back is working, or if when you decide not to engage, that's working. So you should document just as much for yourself and how you're responding to workplace bullying, just like you should be documenting if you want to take things further. So I think you have to decide kind of what your line in the sand is. Because one of the things about bullies, this is what we know, is that if they think that you're engaging in some sort of strategy or you're changing your response, they're going to try to up the game and change the way they're going to bully. Okay, I'm not a believer that there's types of bullies. I think there's bullies, and they use all different strategies, all different types of bullying in order to hurt you as much as possible. And they'll change on a dime, okay? And they use other people. That's also another strategy they use, which is very effective. But I think you need to think about what is your line in the sand, that you're absolutely, if this happens, somebody, you're going to want to push back, okay? So that might be is if they block you in your, stand in front of your office and won't let you out. Maybe that's your line in the sand. Maybe it's if they, call you names or whatever it is. It could be, you'll probably have more than one thing that you're going to say, no, I'm going to push back when XYZ happens. Okay? And so, because what bullies are going to do is they're going to keep bullying you, and they're going to keep pushing forward, and their bullying is going to intensify, and they're going to try to get as many people on board as possible. Okay. One of the things I want to be very clear about is that in bully culture, there's a double standard. Okay. So what's good for the bully is not good for you. So I might be, as if I'm the bully and I'm bullying you, I can call you names. I can lie about you. I can change the criteria for your job description or your workload, but you can't return those things to me. So if you call me names, then that's something totally different. And how you respond makes a big difference because of that double standard. So Bob, your bully, can call you names, do whatever they want to you, but if you return that same behavior back, because there's a double standard and you're already seen as the problem, how you respond, even if you're reciprocating Bob's behavior, you're going to be seen as terrible. It's going to be horrible, right? You're going to get the backlash and all of that. And again, when you're being bullied, your credibility is already not very good. So how you respond, if you reciprocate and do the same thing Bob is, you're going to look much worse and get into trouble where Bob's already manipulating the situation and getting away with bullying. So that's really important to think about when you think about how you're going to push back. Now, I've said this before, is when you push back, you want, again, the best way to push back is if there are trusted partnerships or collaborative partners that can be witnesses to verify your pushing back and how you push back. Because again, what Bob is going to do is if it's just the two of you, Bob's going to twist anything, words, make up stuff, lie, do all the bullying that Bob does to make sure that you look bad. Okay? So you always want to make sure when you're pushing back, again, that there are witnesses that you can trust, not Bob's minions, but people that you trust. That's really important. You need somebody to corroborate what you did. So again, in a public place, in a hallway where there's witnesses, I would recommend never, if possible, again, I know this is not always possible, especially if your bully is your boss, is that you're not alone with your bully. That there's always a third party or someone that even if you can't really trust them, that there's a third party that is going to be there for your own safety reasons. So in public, if you can, of course, not always. That's, I'm also a realist. I know I've been in the workforce for a long time, so I know that's not always real. Again, when you go in, you don't want to spend a whole lot of time, especially if you're confronting Bob, right? You're going in and you're pushing back and you're confronting. You want to go in, push back, and get out. You want to say what you have to say what you want to change, and then get out. So you should have a goal whenever you're trying to push back. Because one of the things Bob is really good at is throwing out those hooks. And then you get caught up and keep engaging, and Bob keeps bullying, and you keep being defensive, and all of those things. And that's what Bob wants. So when you push back, you should have a time limit or you don't just keep engaging with Bob. There's a goal to when you push back. There's a reason that you're doing it. It's part of a strategy, and you're doing it because maybe Bob has crossed the line, or you're trying to, again, stand up for yourself. Maybe Bob is trying to bully someone else, or whatever the reason is. But you don't want to get into a time where you're pushing back and it's Bob, then it's you, and then it's Bob, then it's you, because then that's just a no-win situation. And actually, in those situations, I guess it is a win. It's a win for Bob. Okay, so pushback should always have a strategy and a goal. What's the reason that you're going to push back? Okay. And again, so let's say, for example, that your big boss is coming to town and you're in a meeting and, you're worried that Bob's going to push back, okay? One of the things that is a good strategy is to not worry about what Bob's going to do, because Bob can be unpredictable. We can't always predict when Bob is going to bully, but we can strategize about what things has Bob done in the past when your big boss has been there that can let you in on some ideas of what Bob might do and how have you responded in the past. So if you're in a scenario or you're going into a situation and you're thinking, oh, Bob could really bully me in this situation, think back to some times where that did happen. How did you respond and was that effective? Okay, you can't worry about what Bob is going to do. You can only strategize about how you will push back. And so think about, if Bob called you names in front of the big boss and the big boss laughed at that, what's a way that you can push back that is both professional, keeps your credibility, and also lets Bob and the big boss know that you really don't appreciate that, right? And so you can think about verbal responses to those things. For example, you might say, if Bob calls you names in front of the big boss, is you can say, Bob's up to his old tricks, calling names. I'm not sure that goes. I'm not sure. Hey, big boss, is that in line with our mission, which says we respect and treat people with respect and dignity? Okay, so you can push back in a way that's ha ha, but it's still, there's something there, right? Again, and you're also in that scenario and in that situation planting the seed to the big boss that your mission says we treat people with respect and dignity. Bob isn't doing that. So there's a lot of ways that you can push back that are very effective, get your point across, you keep your credibility, and you start planting the seeds in people's mind that, something's off here. So again, and so one of the things that happens when you're being bullied is, first off, it's pretty exhausting, and it wears on you. And the reason that it wears on you is because it's abuse. You're experiencing abuse in the workplace on a regular, oftentimes daily basis, and that's exhausting. Okay, so please give yourself credit for that it's exhausting and it's abuse, and it does take a toll. And when you come into the workplace, some days you've just had it, right? And that's okay. There were lots of days when I walked into the workplace that I could have snapped very easily if I wanted to. But on those days where I wasn't feeling emotionally, maybe not as emotionally solid as I wanted to, I then chose on those days to try to distance myself from the bullying, not have confrontation with the bully, and to let some things just go. Okay, because again, one of the purposes that Bob is bullying you, and Bob probably has minions, maybe you even have more than one bully in your workplace, the point is to harm. That's the point of bullying, is to hurt and harm you. And it's okay for you to pull back and step back on days where maybe you're not feeling quite up for it. And you don't have to engage with Bob every time Bob throws out some snarky comment or is bullying you. Okay? Bob is trying to do that to hurt and harm, and when you respond every time Bob does that, then that empowers Bob to keep doing it. One of the huge mistakes that I made when I was being bullied is I couldn't let anything go. And the reason that happened was, well, part of it was because of my own personality, right? That's one thing that got in my way. But the other couple of things that I think are really important that got in my way of dealing and strategizing and managing the bullying in a way that reduced the traumatic effects on me was I had other people who had been bullied and had issues with the people who were bullying me in the workplace standing behind me, egging me on, saying, oh, you need to do this because the union will protect you. You need to do that. Your supervisor should be doing this. You need to do that. It's HR's job to do X, Y, Z. So I had all these people encouraging me to engage every time the bullies came after me, when the minions came after me. And so they were always pushing me to engage. The other thing, the reason that I did a lot of pushback that caused me more harm, okay, I wasn't hurting the bully, I was hurting myself, is that many of the experts said that reporting was the way to get the bullying to stop. Well, that's not true. Reporting, the same experts have done research who said that bullying increases when you report, but the answer to stop bullying is reporting. So it doesn't make sense. So I had a lot of information that what I thought was going to help make the bullying stop was to report and keep engaging, and actually reporting and continuing to engage were huge mistakes because that increased the bullying. So strategizing when it comes to pushback is really, really important. And so you should have a goal for strategizing. One is, again, to really set the boundaries. Remember, you're setting boundaries in the workplace. Bob is not respecting your boundaries. One of my big pet peeves, and I've probably told you this before, is that when people say, oh, you just need to learn how to set boundaries. I know how to set boundaries. Bob doesn't respect my boundaries because he's a bully. But you can set firm boundaries, even though you've done it before. You can push back by doing that. You can push back verbally by maintaining your professionalism and your credibility with the goal to let people know, and Bob and the bullies and the minions, that this is kind of your line in the sand. Now remember, when you draw a line in the sand, Bob's going to keep pushing you up to that line and over it, because once you push back, they know they know your line, okay? And then why are you pushing back? What's your goal? Okay, what is the goal of the reason that you're pushing back? And again, that goal should always be to protect yourself, making sure that you're doing your job, and to reduce the trauma from workplace bullying. So if you're going to push back, and I'll just go into reporting for just a second, but not too much tonight. Reporting is often a pushback, right? Going to talk to Bob is a pushback. If you're going to push back and do things like that and call Bob up and report Bob, what then you also have to realize and prepare for is that that pushback is going to increase bullying and retaliation. And sometimes it's worth that pushback to do it. Okay, so for example, you've heard the story, I had somebody come around the table at me, right? I pushed back by reporting to my supervisor and human resources. Now that did nothing to stop the bullying, but that was a huge line in the sand for me. You can't come at me physically, okay? In retrospect, I probably would have pushed back differently, but that's neither here nor there. So have a goal for your pushback, and remember that sometimes that pushback can increase bullying. But whatever your goal is, if your goal is to get it on record that Bob's a bully, if your goal is to just to report Bob because, again, you're getting frustrated and it's getting tiring, that's okay. Just know that sometimes when you push back, that doesn't stop the bullying, it actually gets worse. So I am a huge, huge fan of planning and strategizing every move when it comes to Bob. Because Bob, your bully, is because it's really important, though, strategizing and having a plan. First off, when you strategize, it gives you a good idea of, you can brainstorm different ideas and different ways to do things, how to communicate differently, how to say things differently, how to, doing the broken record or doing, the sandwich method. All of those things improve who you are as a professional, okay? And those are all great things that you can use, whether you have a Bob the bully in your workplace, or if you have what, again, I'm going to use air quotes, a normal kind of healthy workplace. Okay. And so that's really, really important for you to do that. So you develop more strategies in your toolbox when you think about how you can respond to Bob. And the other great thing about strategizing is, so I didn't have very many tools in my kit, so I used the same strategies over and over and over. But as you develop more strategies, you have a plethora of different ways to deal with Bob, and Bob then can't pick up on how you might respond because you have a whole toolbox of different strategies that you can use to keep Bob on his toes. And it just makes for things better for you when you have different strategies. So you're probably already doing a lot of great things that already work. But if you are interested in learning more strategies to deal with Bob, that's one of the things I can help you with. Okay, we can get on a call and we can talk about some of the things that are working and some of the things that aren't. And again, if you want to take things further and report or do whatever your goal is or your pushback strategy, that's one of the things I can help you with and support you in doing. And so you can message me here, or of course, always go to stopbullyculture.com, or you can just shoot me an email too, which is jan@stopbullyculture.com. But remember, give yourself credit for the great things that you're doing in to deal with Bob. Being at work with the bully is exhausting, and I know that you're already doing a lot of great things. But if you need help with some of those pushback strategies, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope you are doing well, and I will see you next week.